As things stand, let's start with the information. Well, another pretty strong eruption, this time at Mount Merapi, yet another eruption. We should remember that this is how November ended, and this time it's December 2nd. Yesterday, Merapi had a pretty strong eruption. They say that this volcano, along with others, has been showing quite significant activity. Well, the same goes for the Kilauea volcano. Here is the iOS report, and it shows all the activity that has also been happening in that place. November was the volcanic month, and now activity continues into December. We must remember the volcano that erupted in Ethiopia on November 23rd, where the volcano had been dormant for 12,000 years, and on November 23rd it produced this huge eruption, which, well, at the time we were watching here, remember? We put this satellite image here, with an impressive eruption from it. Well, there we can see it. Look at the image. The Red Sea. This is the Red Sea, the entrance to the Red Sea. Yes, this is the Gulf of Oman on this side, the Gulf, the Red Sea. Seeing it like this, well, it's also a very interesting way. And all of this, the amount of material coming out of the volcano after 12,000 years. Honestly, well, it's amazing what we're experiencing. Well, let's go over some details about Mount Merapi, along with the activity they've had, not just from volcanoes, but also from events like these floods. Unfortunately, this little elephant against these rising waters apparently manages to make it through. The elephant is using his trunk a little, but I'm not sure if it can use it as a snorkel. I imagine they can. I've seen that some of these elephants swim quite well, but here it's going against the current, against the mud. The elephant, well, it seems it manages to save itself. But well, they've also been struggling there because of the floods. This time, this elephant would be in Sri Lanka. In different parts of Asia, these tremendous events have been reported. We've been tracking floods and wanted to give you an update. Before we move on to Venezuela and other topics as well, international ones too, let me tell you that among the volcanic activity we've been seeing in general, not just the volcano we mentioned a while ago in Ethiopia. We've been experiencing volcanoes. Yes, we've been experiencing volcanoes in general. There was in the cup, there was in bulk, a cup of water, just water, that's all, nothing else. Last month, a large amount of material was also sent out. Another volcano that also, well, the alert, for example, went up to orange, and as far as I remember, that was the highest alert it reached. Gas and ash emissions have impacted nearby air quality over there in Colombia, the volcano, the same Kilauea volcano, which has been active these past few days. The lava fountains reaching 100, 150, 200 meters, some truly impressive lava fountains here as well. Well, we were seeing some of these amazing images, right? Also part of the activity. Well, the volcano in Iceland, this volcano with the strangest name in the universe that's located down in the south. And from Iceland, another volcano that has also been drawing attention in recent days. Volcanic activity. Sites like Volcano Discovery have been busy lately, keeping things organized as they provide all the details about volcano eruptions. Even Popocatépetl has shown some activity recently, according to Volcano Discovery. And all of this, well, as part of an end of the year with little volcanic activity, but an end of the year with a lot of activity, right? In recent days, the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology has also been reporting on an eruption of the Canlaon volcano over there in the Philippines. Let me check because it's coming in right now. And an university to see if there's already any image or something of this, but well, multiple volcanoes. It's been at least an interesting month in that sense. Let me check if the Canlaon already has some images too. The name is kind of strange, isn't it? Canlaon. Let's move on to the next ones. The other one is also in the Philippines. Yes, look, here it is. This is the Canlaon. But honestly, girls, this is the current image. This one is from early November, yes, and this one is from October. I mean, that's how it's been. This is the one from October, but honestly, I don't see anything. It seems like it says here. According to what Volcano Discovery says, on December 1st, there was volcanic activity in the Canalon, a continuous eruption that reported plumes. The alert level remains at level 3 moderate level. It says not level 3 and level 2. That's how it has been on the scale of 5. The Seismological Institute, also from Pibolsa here in the Philippines, confirms that the Taal volcano has also shown activity. That one stays at levels 1 and 2, so it's fairly calm. And in Indonesia, the Zai volcano is also showing activity. This time, they only have 4 levels. This volcano is at level 2 also with significant activity. Well, that's how things are, right? By the way, on a different note, right? But this is also happening, well, this image, right? An image that's also surprising, right? An explosion. We got it there? Let's see this. Well, like rounds, you can imagine which war it is, the one that's had the most activity in recent years, along with Israel's. Well, this time an attack on the Druzhba pipeline in this area, once again in Russia. On this occasion, the attack would have affected a section near the village of Kansinskoy, that is, on the Tagunov and Livstek line. These damages to Russia's key oil arteries have been part of the Ukrainian strategy in recent times. The idea is not to reduce the amount of energy flowing between Russia and the military, but obviously it also affects civilians. Obviously not, because in the end gasoline is lacking everywhere. That's also part of this war, which has dragged on and become more complicated. And in the meantime, well, while all this is happening, let's listen to what the head of NATO, Mark Rutte, said today about what's been happening, even about Putin himself, who has been speaking, even dressed in military attire yesterday. But here he talks about the issue of the money going to Ukraine, because yesterday they told us, oh, is it true that Europe will stop sending resources to support Ukraine's defense in the war? Well, this is what these threats say.
I'm not going to react to everything Putin is saying. We've seen him in military clothes, dressed like a soldier, but not actually at the front. It was quite far from the front the day before yesterday, so...
First, at that point, he says, Vladimir Putin was dressed in military clothes yesterday, but very far from the front, says Mark Rutte.
Far from the front the day before yesterday, so no, I'm not going to react to...
everything. Pledges.
New Pearl.
Pledges by Norway.
The Netherlands. That's great news. Many pledges have come in, and I hope to announce a few later today. Pledges made today.
There he talks about the announcements he will be making throughout the day, and at that moment is when he mentions that more donations are needed. He is talking about buying more offensive and defensive American weapons through the pool, which they are talking about, well, about $1 billion approximately. This is also to keep civilians and Ukrainian civil infrastructure safe. That's part, let's say, of today's announcement from NATO, but let's move on to what's happening over there in Venezuela. There's a movement that's becoming increasingly clear, especially in a military sense, right? We're talking about a movement from the United States, a deployment, and here we can get a general idea of how this deployment is taking place. But there's also an announcement from Donald Trump at this moment. Donald Trump is announcing that ground attacks against Venezuela are coming. He says it's no longer a question of if, they're coming, it's happening soon. And this is part of a strategy, says the White House, against drugs. The president stated that these operations will begin very soon, which would mark an unprecedented escalation in United States policy in Latin America, according to Trump. And this is good, part of what we're going to see right now with this position and these deployments that are happening. Because right now there are unusual movements compared to what there have been in recent weeks. Yes, thanks for watching, but the ground intervention that he mentions is going to be the most effective. And we know where they live, we know where they are, and we're going to start with that too. This has already been declared, directly referring to the cartels that operate, he says, in Venezuela. They don't specify the type, number, or timing of participating forces. The message says the United States is willing to take military action inside foreign territory if it deems it necessary to stop drug trafficking, he claims. The warning applies beyond Venezuela and raises concerns in other Latin American countries too. The movement is not only happening in Venezuela, and that's something to watch out for, because anyone who does it and sells them in our country could be subject to attack, says Donald Trump. In other words, anyone who makes these kinds of substances could be at risk of being attacked by the United States. According to what's coming out of this movement, and there are unusual, very interesting movements in this deployment. The United States Navy is not only maintaining a naval presence in the southern Caribbean, obviously right next to Venezuela, but it's already happening, a formation made up of guided missile destroyers, and they would be supported by advanced patrols. They say this operation could be ensuring maritime security before carrying out active surveillance and operating. They assure that the response would be quick in the event of a potential incident in the area. Now the deployment has been interpreted as a geopolitical message. Of course, an operation is about to take place. The Caribbean, especially near Venezuela and routes to Panama, are becoming more relevant. Those are the areas they're considering in theory to attack each other. He says this presence also shows commitment to regional security, and now they will operate in that area. The earlier warning was very similar to this one. By the way, there hasn't been any reaction to what Maduro has been saying or to what Maduro has been showing in these images. Today, this image was reported an image of a Brazilian T-27. The Venezuelan forces reportedly shot down, they say, an aircraft of unknown origin, an operation carried out by a Karakorum K-8 aircraft with support from a Brazilian Tucano T-27. That draws attention. In other words, a Venezuelan aircraft and a Brazilian Tucano T-27, where they would be shooting at an aircraft of unknown origin. There is the plane, I don't know if you can see it, there it is, well in the air, apparently already under fire. This draws attention. What type of attack was this? That's the image that the Venezuelan Air Force posted today. And well, showing that they're around there too. Obviously, it's not that they want to. I imagine competing with the F-35S and all that, but it's more like a demonstration that at least they're going to try to put up a fight. And that's what the United States is calculating right now. How far do they want to escalate this situation, or escalate it to an armed conflict that could spread, or an armed conflict that ends very quickly, right? That's a big question right now. That's what's being considered. By the way, another important point is these messages that Putin has been giving lately. This is quite a curious message, because these are the messages that are shared within Russian media and also in the media both inside and outside of Russia. But Russian media basically try to give the impression that they are not carrying out these attacks. About Ukraine, it says that in Ukraine they are acting with surgical precision, meaning that they are only attacking with precision. They aren't targeting civilian buildings. And meanwhile, explosions inside buildings, inside civilian infrastructure keep happening. Right? But in the end, they've wanted to keep this narrative going for years. Honestly, it's amazing that bubble they want to create, making people live like that over there in Russia, right? Some people, often out of naivety, also believe these things. Well, that's how things are on this topic in that sense. Very interesting. Honestly, what's happening in the Caribbean, we'll see if the attack that's supposedly coming actually happens. In the meantime, Pete has said no. This character Secretary of War, they say, would now be facing possible repercussions in response to a report in which, well, an investigation is underway. Not only the current issue with the small boats, but also that information. Do you remember what they revealed on Signal? Yes, through Signal, they were chatting and discussing situations where, well, they were talking about conflicts that were about to happen. Right now it's known that there were American agents who could have been at risk of their lives because they were discussing these things on an insecure, unencrypted platform. Let's say no then. Could that have legal implications against the Secretary of War? We'll see, but in the meantime, there are 4 sources who confirm this from Wuhan. I have been able to observe and read the report from the Pentagon's Inspector General that was delivered yesterday to the Armed Services Committees of the Chambers. Members of the United States Congress and Senate, where, well, they state that the Secretary of War ran the risk of compromising information, which is vital for certain agents, not for certain agents. There is the report then of what is happening in this situation. A moment not only, well, of potential risk for this operation that is taking place at that moment, but also, well, let's say a new way of doing politics that this Pete Heston has had, a media-driven style like Donald Trump, right? In the Trump style where, well, everything is handled through tweets or WhatsApp and that kind of thing, right? That's something we also need to pay attention to, because the consequences it could have for the Secretary of War could be serious in his case. No, let's move on to another matter. Let's go to other important topics as well. Let's go then. Notice that they're not the only ones preparing for a war at sea. No, I mean, what's going on in the Caribbean, right? Things are also happening in China, and they're quite striking. The Chinese military aviation is also already carrying out what would be considered pre-war exercises. In other words, they're even simulating attacks near the Taiwan Strait, not just as a classic military exercise, but it seems like these are already pre-armed conflict drills. This is reported by the head of Taiwanese intelligence, Tsai Ming-jen, who states that China is currently making moves. They're already considering attacking not only Taiwanese ships but also foreign vessels that might be helping Taiwan. It's a message for Japan, mainly right now, but also for the United States, but mainly for Japan, right? Because Japan, well, mentioned. The new Prime Minister, Sanai Takahashi, said, look, in the event of an attack on Taiwan, we will step in to defend them. This really upset them and still does. The military movements are reinforcing Beijing's presence in this strategic area, which is key for international maritime transit. If we look at, let's go to the map, but if we look at this area of the world, we see how this little piece of this area is right next to Taiwan. This whole area, well, it has different islands belonging to the Japanese, as I've already mentioned several times. But anyway, in this area, there aren't any movements. They're in this area here in the strait, which is already right next to, well, in fact, on this side, there are Taiwanese islands here. Taiwan, it's not just this. Taiwan has islands, even on the Chinese coast right next to it. There are islands there too. Well, the movement is happening here. Despite the maneuvers, warships from at least 8 countries, including the United States, the United Kingdom, and Japan, have crossed through here this year. Let's say friends of Taiwan. 8 countries have been crossing this area throughout the year, at least twice each. German, United States, United Kingdom, and Japanese ships have passed through here, along with several other countries. France, countries that are friends of Taiwan, they have had military ships passing through here, through this area. Clearly, China isn't happy about this. The tension led Taiwan to announce a 40 billion increase in defense. The United States is increasing its support for Taipei with new legislation. China is also deploying aerial and naval surveillance over every foreign vessel and responds with diplomatic criticism to any official passing through that area. China has always considered Taiwan as part of its territory. No, and it claims sovereignty over the strait. Meanwhile, the West defends it as an autonomous zone, even recognizing it as part of China but autonomous. So, well, there it is, right? That's what the international allies are reporting, you know. They're concerned, but right now they're also just watching what's happening with China. A move that could also happen, right? At some point, I don't know. Yes, I think it's more of a psychological war in that sense. No, it doesn't look like he's gonna make a move soon. By the way, changing the subject, they're accusing a man of swallowing a necklace, a pendant, right? Reports say they're also called $19,000 necklaces inspired by the James Bond movie. The New Zealand police already have the person in custody and are waiting for him to go to the bathroom. Literally, the police are waiting for the necklace to come out however it has to, right? And well, that's it. This man supposedly tried to smuggle a necklace worth 33,000 New Zealand dollars or 19,000 United States dollars by swallowing it. The 32-year-old man, whose name has not been publicly revealed, is accused of eating it. A pendant ornament more than a necklace. It's like an ornament, but it had pearls. Well, not exactly pearls, and I imagine some other things as well. But it cost $19,000. At the time of his arrest, a medical evaluation was carried out and an officer is assigned to watch over him. Well, to wait until, well, that jewelry can be recovered, so to speak, right? We're going to be, well, waiting to see what happens with that case. But it is curious, isn't it? The case, huh? There have already been several of this kind where they've been swallowing some kind of jewelry. Even in the same mines where the famous blood diamonds are, sometimes they do that, right? Even swallowing a little diamond here and there, apparently just to take them out. Of course, if they catch them, it's really tough. What's it called? The punishment, right? I mean, it's really harsh, but, well, that's also part of what's happening. Let's move on to other important matters. And he keeps changing the subject. Well, there aren't any more images of what's happening with these snowfalls up north in the United States and Canada where it's being shown. Well, this time there are people who are having fun, isn't that right? The winter storm, huh? With skis and with horses, I mean, they don't have wheels, they have skis or like a specific type of sled. I'm not sure what to call it, but it's interesting, right? There they are. There are the movements, clearly. Well, sometimes during the year these movements can happen. They're facing this winter storm and some people are having fun too. Another interesting topic as well is this. This image, let's see if we can see it, is a journalist over there in this area, which is so disputed in the northern part between Turkey, the entire Kurdish region, and this whole area. They've been having significant problems, especially considering that, well, there's not much freedom of expression, so to speak. Obviously, they didn't censor this journalist live. She's a reporter from Channel 8. As far as we know, this happened in Lajan, a town near Erbil, close to an autonomous region of Iraqi Kurdistan. Yes, look at what happens. Let's listen to this part. Come on.
Let's listen.
And at that moment, they take the microphone away from him, they struggle for the microphone, and at one point they take the camera away from the cameraman. And well, that's part of the situation, let's say. It happened in Lahan, near Erbil, the capital of Iraqi Kurdistan. It's the northern part of Iraq in this region, governed by different parties with deep rivalries, such as the Kurdistan Democratic Party, or the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan. In recent days, there have been protests in Lajan, apparently motivated by social discontent over services, meaning a lack of basic services and local political tensions. Media outlets close to the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan have been effectively covering the protests. But obviously the other party, which is the one in power, the Kurdistan Democratic Party, doesn't like the situation, right? And now, they just went ahead and took away their cameras. That's part of what's happening in that region of the world. Well, the prophecy of the flood has returned with this individual we're seeing here on the screen. His name is Evo Noah, and they say he's the new Noah of this era. He preaches in Kasoa and has revived the prophecy of the flood. after a devastating hurricane. Well, according to reports, in the face of this hurricane, he thinks that a flood could be coming. Yes, this preacher from Ghana caused or has been causing, well, a lot of, well, images that even, well, this image, by the way, this image itself is not from there, but people have been sharing it as if it were of this man. Careful, okay? That's not the case either. I was saying this image, this ship is in the United States. Someone else also wants to do one. A Noah's Ark, right? I think that one's more like an exhibition, but he's actually making a Noah's Ark. This one. Look, it's smaller. There it is, right? There he is, on top of that ark. The thing is, this guy has gone viral. They've shared a lot of pictures and also a lot of fake pictures. By the way, it goes without saying, but well, he's a preacher from Ghana, and he's not always dressed like they show him there. In that one, well, he dresses more or less normally. But in this image, the one that's captivated people more, he has a very old-fashioned look, right? Actually, the image has always been that way, but it's not really like that, right? Or does he wear regular t-shirts as shown in this image? There it is behind him, the attempt, let's say, at a boat, so to speak, a canoe, or I don't know what to call it, a boat. Well, no, not a canoe, obviously not, but yes, a huge boat that would try to revive the ancient prophecy. And, well, obviously he's expecting a great flood, right? He expects it before December 25, 2025, so he'll soon find out if it's going to rain or not. As he says, this ark basically, well, he says it was a divine vision and that, well, besides, he claims that his followers are building 10 more arks to survive this flood. He says it's coming December 25th and it makes me listen. Right now, even his appearance has changed a bit. He dresses more like Noah, or at least how he imagines Noah looked. Yes, they've been questioning him about everything. They've insisted that even in the Bible it says at one point that there will never be another flood. God won't allow that anymore, so it doesn't really make sense with the book. And, well, there are a lot of pretty interesting and funny discussions, some of them. Because, well, the point here is that they've obviously taken it more as a joke because every 2 or 3 years, something like this comes up, right? They come out all while making their own coffins, this time over there in Ghana. No, well, that's how things are, right? By the way, it's called Evo Noe. And after what happened in Jamaica, do you remember this very powerful hurricane, which was truly historic and broke records? Here we told you how it broke records in terms of wind after what happened in Jamaica, which, by the way, also affected Cuba and other places. From then on, very recently, he thought the flood was already happening, right? And well, he's already a pretty controversial preacher in that part of the world. This Noah here is dressed as usual. There he is. Look, he's wearing his Ark shirt. They call him Noah Arks, right? And well, he's dressed more in character, so to speak, right? Well, that's part of the interesting things from today that I wanted to tell you about. And speaking of interesting things, let me tell you something. A discovery that I also find very interesting, a study that's revealing that the mind could be even more impressive, maybe, than we imagine. On some occasions, it's being analyzed and researched how the mind has a capacity for synchrony beyond what was previously thought. A kind of telepathy, so to speak, a natural synchronization that we humans have when working as a team, which according to scientists has surprised them. This isn't the first study on this topic, but this one claims your thoughts aren't just your own. The study reveals that brain synchronization when collaborating in a team, according to neuroscientists from Australia, confirms that brains have the ability to synchronize when working together. Using electroencephalogram scanners, the study was able to locate and measure the brain activity of 24 pairs collaborating on a visual categorization task on a computer in just 200 milliseconds. The brains of real pairs showed much stronger brain alignment than pairs that were not real pairs. Some participants were paired for the experiment while others were real couples. The ones who were real couples who actually knew how to work as a team, who had experience working as a team. Their synchrony was at a neural level, he says. The phenomenon of neural synchronization became more intense over time. Since the couples, the non-couple pairs, once they had spent some time working together, also started to synchronize. That was something that also surprised them. Dr. Denise Morel, who would be part of the development of this study, says, this finding could have profound implications for the study of collaboration, group education, and collective intelligence. Additionally, it also opens doors to new ways of understanding communication and decision-making in environments that are shared or involve teamwork. Well, that's part, let's say, of this development of this quite interesting discovery. Let's move on to other important topics. Changing the subject. And given the possibility that someone might make a fake and then spread false information, as happens all the time with famous people, with politicians, with business leaders, and so on, they make them say things like, Ganem, you have to invest in this, you have to invest in that. Well, so that these deep fakes aren't being made. Right now, a tool has been introduced that they claim will try to prevent these kinds of situations. So what this tool does is detect when something is fake, when it's a deep fake, and that way prevent digital fraud. Companies are constantly facing increasingly sophisticated digital attacks. This is thanks to the chairs. So something has been invented called deep sight, which means seeing in a deep way. And with this, it will be possible to identify and block this type of information, which basically seeks to manipulate. No, that's the idea behind this kind of, well, frauds that others commit. And this will help them avoid such situations. It happens often, so, well, it's happening. Let's see if they'll keep moving forward together. Artificial intelligence isn't advancing, but artificial intelligence tools are being developed mainly to prevent fraud, causing anxiety. A rather curious thing in this recent Endeavor report reveals that the region experiences 40% more weekly cyber attacks than the global average. This refers to Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico in Latin America, which are already seeing this increase. And that's why they ask for security tools to be used for verification so that all these kinds of situations like fraud don't proliferate. Let's address other important matters too. Thanks, Francisco Arce. How has Roble been? Today we'll discuss something about Cuba. By the way, Adilson Tapatia Plus, how are you? A big greeting to the whole community. Thank you very much for what you say. What you say is very interesting, Tapatia says. And women also synchronize hormonally, which is a very interesting topic. Greetings, Tapatia Adilson from Gigi Jose Zarate. How have you been? Very good, he says. I doubt that art could survive a flood. Honestly, I don't think it could even handle rain. If you don't do it in style, well, damn, put a rain like that. But in style, you just can't handle it. Alright, let's move on to other important matters. Well, it's being reported right now that a blackout is coming, or is happening, or is going to happen, and it's going to be historic. Over there in Cuba, blackouts have already been happening, and now they're talking about a massive blackout. Even worse, the massive blackout is leaving nearly 3.5 million people without electricity in western Cuba, including the capital, Havana, Salaban. The national electrical system failed at 5 a.m., affecting Pinar, Rio Artemisa, Pinar del Rio, Artemisa, Vallebeque, and Havana. The causes have not been reported, but they are obviously known. Experts point out that approximately $10 billion are needed to restore the electrical grid to the minimum. The Cuban economy has been affected right now, dropping by 11% in the last 5 years. And daily blackouts have intensified. According to the report, 59% of the country was without power at the same time on Monday this week, an obviously tremendous blackout. This is expected to be a difficult week for several regions of Cuba. According to the Ministry of Energy and Mines, 59% of the country lost power simultaneously on Monday. That's at least what they admit, although the suspicion is that the blackout was even bigger. The thing is, it's something that's happening, and it's happening often, very often. A series of blackouts and blackouts and blackouts, they just don't stop happening, unfortunately. And well, yeah. Meanwhile, unfortunately, we don't see any structural change in Cuba that would let us say, well, there will be a change where these kinds of events won't happen so often anymore. But, well, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. I mean, the problem is going to continue. I mean, unfortunately, no. Another issue that also draws attention is this. Well, it shows what they've done again. These Venezuelan militias made up of civilians, they're really not military, they're civilians. But, well, they dress them up like that and make them say their little phrases. Let's listen a bit to this matter.
The commander of the state of La Guaira. We are the 73 commanders of the militia community unit.
Well, there they go. There they show these images, you know. Chavista militiamen say they are prepared to defend Nicolas Maduro if the United States attacks. This is part of, let's say, what is happening in this, well, such a strange way the Venezuelan government is acting, showing and having civilians say a bunch of things. Supposedly trained, but well, they're really just civilian militiamen, and honestly, in a conflict neither would last long, unfortunately. If this were to actually happen that way, it could obviously result in a lot of casualties. And this could happen because, well, according to what is known, according to the reports, the attack is imminent. We'll see. Well, what happens with these people, right? Meanwhile, there's also an announcement from the United States. This is commented on by the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who basically confirms what had been suspected for some time. Is he moving from the United States to Nigeria? This has happened, and not only in Nigeria due to the attacks specifically targeting Christians, but supposedly they are going to operate anywhere where the religion or beliefs of a person are being attacked. He says the United States will take decisive action in response to atrocities and violence against Christians in Nigeria and worldwide. The State Department will restrict United States visas for those who knowingly direct, authorize, finance, support, or carry out violations of religious freedom. This visa policy applies to Nigeria and other governments or individuals who persecute people for their religious beliefs. That would be phase one of a series of operations that could even be military. In this case, especially in Nigeria, reports say they could even deploy troops there. The point is, well, the number of people who have lost their lives specifically in Nigeria is in the tens of thousands. They mentioned 50,000. The truth is we don't know, but many people have lost their lives as Christians, targeted for their religion and beliefs. In that regard, obviously it's extremely harsh and has been filled with radical groups. That region of the world is not just Nigeria. I mean, it even reaches Mozambique and even further south. The problem? Let's move on to other important matters. The other topics also, what's happening in the world. Well, to begin with, another report we have pending is this discovery. A new study shows that ants have the surprising ability to decide how to die. Right? An interesting case or series of cases. And then this study reveals that young ants asked to lose their lives. They ask to be put to death, a sort of euthanasia, so to speak, when they are sick, when they have a disease, as if they can't survive. The young ants, to free themselves from life, so to speak, emit a smell, and this causes or signals the worker ants to put them to death, right? This is to protect the colony from infection, so they emit the smell. And so, well, that's basically what they do. Other ants go and kill them. Many animals hide diseases for social reasons. For example, did you know that sick humans risk infecting others? In order to go to the office or the bar, and we used to go, well, they hide that, don't they? However, and other animals have discovered this too. In this case, they act like a superorganism, not like a kind of hive mind, so to speak. They don't sacrifice themselves for the survival of all the other little ants, do they? He says this also draws attention. Ant nests are a perfect place for an outbreak of diseases because there are thousands of ants crawling all over each other. But when one of them detects that something is going wrong, or rather that it's sick, it produces a smell so that it doesn't spread. With that, they take its life. And while these ants no longer infect others, right? He says adult worker ants respond when facing a disease that could spread through the colonies. Also, what they sometimes do is not take their lives, but the ants themselves. They isolate themselves and leave the nest. They move away so as not to spread it inside the nest. This behavior is pretty interesting, isn't it? Another thing that also draws attention today is what's been happening in, well, let's say, well, yes. It's also a discovery, because in the end it's a discovery they've realized. How can you recharge human cells that are aging, cells that you suddenly think, well, this cell is about to die, or what? Or can they be recharged? Well, it turns out, according to what scientists have discovered, that there are indeed ways to recharge them effectively as if they were, let's say, batteries, so to speak. New research is showing that human cells can be effectively recharged by replacing their internal batteries. Very small power plants, right, which are called mitochondria, would be like the battery. This discovery, he says, could have a wide benefit in healthcare and even in medical treatments. The mitochondria, or the batteries, so to speak, of the mitochondria, in most of our cells, when they naturally decrease in number, they slow down and wear out. And as we age, this happens more. They wear out more. Once they start functioning below normal capacity, these same ones can contribute to multiple diseases of different types, heart diseases, brain diseases, and so on. Less mitochondria means, let's say, less energy. Disease begins, diseases start to appear. The study was carried out by researchers from Texas A&M University, and they used special flower-shaped particles called nanoflowers to eliminate damaged oxygen molecules and thus activate the genes that increase the number of mitochondria. So the amount of mitochondria increased, and therefore, well, they saw, let's say, how it became healthier. The area, according to what they report, is fundamental. Those stem cells with improved energy can then fight their old, worn out, or damaged cell mitochondria and exchange them for new ones. What we did is we trained the healthy cells to share their spare batteries with the weaker ones, according to what biomedical engineer Aquehiles Gajamar says. Increasing the amount of mitochondria in the donor cells can help the aged or damaged cells recover their vitality. Without the need for genetic modification, your gene wouldn't change and you wouldn't be given any medication either. Basically, they give these cells the order to start reactivating, to start improving themselves, right? And well, even within this study, they have shown this image. Look, this is the image where what they're talking about is happening. Aren't you talking about the moment when the cells recharge? Well, no, it doesn't come with an explanation, but let's say this is what they've shown, along with the study, already published in various scientific journals. In fact, on the same page of the Department of Biomedical Engineering at Texas A&M University, that is, at Texas A&M University in the United States. The video is there in case you want to watch it. I think it was published about 2 weeks ago and you can check it out there. A video of just a few seconds. But well, it's interesting and exciting that they suddenly share that, right? They don't usually do that. Let's go. Let's check out the comments. Let's go. How have you been? How's everything going? I hope you're doing well. Greetings to the entire community, to the 500 plus with us, and to everyone who helps by sharing or liking. Thank you, we appreciate it. How have you been, Adil? They're good. Marcella, how have you been? Greetings, very good. How are you? How are things going? Says Raul. Greetings from Lomas de Zamora, Argentina. Awesome. How have you been? Greetings, very good. Says Tapatia, how have you been? Greetings, I don't know. You know, I'm not sure if it's as a donor or if it's their own cells that they... Because there are cells that give the order to increase or improve the mitochondria. And then they start, let's say, they start teaching the others how to do it or something like that. So like him, the idea is very interesting lately. Between bio, as they call it, bioengineering and nanotechnology, many discoveries are accelerating, but it's about these things actually arriving, not just being distributed. How have you been? Mosky says, cheer up Venezuela, greetings, just like you've been. Very good, Pablo, how are you? He says greetings, Maduro finally understood. Pa, how are you, Pablo? Greetings. Let's see if this move that the United States says it's going to make actually happens. No, but obviously the stakes have already been raised a lot, so I imagine something is coming, right? I imagine so. Jenny, how have you been? Greetings to Florida. Very good. By the way, we're going to switch to another broadcast right now. We're going to talk about what the United States Congressman Tim Borges is saying. Tim Borges is a United States congressman who has been generating a lot of attention lately because of a series of facts he has been revealing about the webs. Things the United States military has revealed to him. A congressman openly talking about what they've told him is under the water is super crazy. We're also going to talk about declassification has taken time. This is still classified. And because over time there has been a declassification of the use of, let's say, certain living beings as spies by the CIA. We're going to talk a bit about that too. And we're going to talk about an update on the Atlas and how that's going as well. I mean, if you'd like to join us, we'll be on the Hermano Pepe Clips channel, just in case you're interested. I already refilled my coffee because earlier we were with Jerez. We were on his channel a while ago talking. We spent almost 2 hours there, more or less, on various topics, right? And I already finished my coffee, so I just refilled it to chat with you all for a while here. Says Gonzalo. Greetings from Cochabamba, Bolivia. How have you been? How are things in Cochabamba? He says, Bolivia, go ahead. Free Venezuela. He says, what do I miss? How are they ordered? Science won't explain it anymore, or they just won't say, right? But right from the start, here's the explanation to lie, isn't it? Let's see if we can, this is it. The biomedical expert, one of the people in charge, has already uploaded it to the University of Texas. At least his name is Aquiles, here Hiles, or rather Gajar War, or are they really curious? His name is Doctor, and well, basically what he explains, he says, they shed about twice as many mitochondria as expected, they report. According to the researchers, these smooth muscle cells of the heart increased between 3 and 4 times in the heart cells exposed to 1. In other words, these were cells that were exposed to chemotherapy, so the cells were damaged. Then they add or send them. These, let's say, cells with double mitochondria, in other words, with more energy, so to speak. So in those new cells with double energy, in other words, with double energy charge, with double mitochondria, he says, the survival rates of the treated cells started to increase. He says they improved significantly. In other words, the cells damaged by the chemo were kind of recovered thanks to these other cells with double mitochondria. No, he says, the researchers suggest that the approach could be used, for example, to rejuvenate cells anywhere in the body, even near the heart. For example, for cardiovascular problems, for example, he says directly, even in the muscle. For people with muscular dystrophy, that would be a life-changing development. So, wherever there are cells, skin, heart, muscle, with these, let's call them double battery cells. They don't get the information on how to do it, and then they start acting in that direction, right? The study is called Nanomaterial-Induced Mitochondrial Biogenesis, which improves the efficiency of mitochondrial transfer, both intracellular and intercellular. That's the name of the study, right? And then you have the authors and all the details, right? How is it? Just in case, I mean, if someone is interested in this, I thought it would be interesting to talk about it. Let's go. Let's head over there. Let's go that way right now. I'll wait for you there. Pepe Clips, please be quiet over there. And what if he does it with the grass mushroom, this little mushroom, not a mix between the radioactive mushroom and these things? Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Tapatia. Greetings, Angel, to the whole community. Patrick Constado, great. Let's go. I'll be waiting for you, right? So if you'd like to come in, let's go that way.
Thank you for watching the PP News Live, where the events of planet Earth and the secrets of outer space are analyzed like nowhere else. Thank you for subscribing.